get started. Thank you all for joining us. Firstly, just a couple of introductions. I'm Jonathan. I set up Hubbub in 2011. I'm originally technical, so I have a computer science degree. Built a number of our early products as a business. I still do little bits and pieces of building from time to time. And I'm really excited to have you here to talk through one of our exciting new tools. So without further ado, I'm going to get my screen shared, pop on some slides so we can start to run through some of the interesting developments we have here. Excellent. So I've said a little bit about who I am, a bit more about Hubbub. Hubbub's traditionally been in the digital giving space. We've done loads of work in crowdfunding where we started, year-round giving through our causes product, Challenge Week, and Giving Day, of course, where we are probably best known. We've been running since 2011. I've worked with hundreds of UK education institutions across both higher ed, independent schools, and a number of state schools as well. We are leading the way in digital stewardship as well. We have just developed our new video stewardship tool, which allows you to send videos to individual constituents, either recorded by students or by fundraisers, and say thank you or engage them with further content and asks. And in the last 6 or 7 months, we've launched our telephone fundraising software. We've been delivering telephone fundraising services and consultancy for the last couple of years. But in order to deliver a more integrated experience for clients, we decided it made sense to bring our telephone software offering to the market as well. So that has been now running since around September, October last year. I'm here to talk to you about the fundraiser training offering. Now, AI, as you know, there's lots of noise about AI, and it's really not obvious yet how sustainable its growth and use is going to be in the sector, or even the areas in the sector where it has the most potential use. And I could probably give an entire webinar on how we might embed it in across different bits and pieces of the work that we do. One of the things where we feel it has the opportunity to make a huge difference is in the operational aspects of the work that we do as a sector. So not necessarily the actual donor communications, thinking about kind of personalizing communications. It has some ability to do some great work there, but there are some issues with that kind of work around the perceptions of risk, around what happens if it makes mistakes. Some of the areas where it can be incredibly productive for us are in analysis, are in generating copy and content, are in analyzing large volumes of copy and content. One of the use cases we've just put into our telephone campaigns software, for example, is to standardize the notes that the student callers are making into a simple set of questions, ensuring that we retain all the information that's in there, but keep it clean and keep the kind of language that's used consistent, and make sure we've got all of the answers that we need, as well as extracting follow-up actions that might otherwise just be missed or written in the call notes section. So there's some really potentially powerful use cases. One of the other ones we found is in the training space, and I'm going to show you FundCoach, our new offering here. So just to kind of take a step back, like what problem were we envisaging? Well, when we worked with a number of clients on telephone appeals, we noticed that the training it's not bad, right? Don't get me wrong. It's just, it feels like one of those things where more practice gave more confidence, and the more authentic the practice, the more real it was, the more confident the callers got. And you'll typically find in an appeal that you save quite a number of your higher value donors, or those that you want to have really good conversations with, to the end of a campaign, because that's when your students will have got the most practice and will be the most confident. What that really says is, at the start, we're letting them experiment on real potential prospects when we know that they're not quite ready to be doing that kind of thing. some of this is because when we do the training or the actual role play sessions with them, it can be a bit awkward. Some people really don't like sitting opposite a peer or in a room surrounded by other peers that they're doing this with initially. It takes a little bit of time to get relaxed. It can also be challenging to run like complex scenarios. So, you know, you're going to make 3 asks, a direct debit ask, a slightly lower value direct debit ask, and then a single gift ask. Practicing that can be, you know, quite complex. It requires 2 people to follow a script and role play the different roles in it. You're probably only going to get 1 or 2 chances to practice that. That also comes on to the second point here. It's a lack of time to kind of repeat the exercises. Even if you allocate a couple of days to doing this training, each individual caller is probably still only going to get a few hours of actual practice time on all of the potential scenarios that could come up. And that's not much, you know. There's an opportunity, I think, to do better. Sometimes there's a lack of confidence in public. I think I mentioned this, like often role play, especially early on in the training, is done expositionally. So we put 2 people in the middle of the room and have everybody watch and then comment on it. So this is like, you know, not only does it not teach very many people at the same time, I guess, it can also really affect accessibility and reduce effectiveness, right? So if I'm somebody that might be really good on the phones one-to-one, but I'm not very confident at speaking in front of a whole audience or being part of that kind of interaction, I'm really you know, like it really disadvantages me and probably knocks my confidence quite a bit. So I feel like there's also an access point here in bringing in people who are maybe a little less confident off the bat, giving them the chance to sort of practice. And there can also be a lack of authenticity in difficult conversations, right? There's only so many times we're going to ask students to role play being the spouse of an alum who's died, you know, and have those kind of interactions. It's quite awkward, it's quite difficult, it's quite uncomfortable. You know, and yet those are the interactions that to some extent we really need to practice the most, because they're the ones that could go wrong and really dent caller confidence. So imagine if instead of doing this, we could configure a set of bespoke scenarios for your campaign, your situation, or your institution, leverage some common ones like there's an alum who really doesn't want to talk to us. Let's practice that interaction and see how that call should go. Set up these sort of specific interactions, styles, scripts, or patterns for the calls, and then give callers, and I say all major gift fundraisers. This doesn't just have to be used for telethons. This could in theory also be used for major gift fundraisers or those otherwise with a portfolio who are going to be reaching out to people, but giving them the time and the space to practice these interactions with an AI agent as many times as they want. So, you know, if they get halfway through an interaction and realize that this is really going downhill, just stop, have another go, stop, go do some research, have another go, and go figure out how best to handle those interactions. Can also give participants the transcripts of the calls that they've just had, they've just practiced, as well as helpful suggestions for how they might improve it. And allow all of this training and practice and improvement to be done remotely, anywhere from a browser, without there needing to be, you know, somebody role playing being the constituent, somebody being the caller, and then essentially having to do it at the same time, synchronizing either in person or remotely. So this frees up the kind of training time. Now the training can be done anywhere in advance of the campaign, at any time and at any length, really. Could also use this kind of technology to assess natural conversational style and talent. So when you're doing the recruitment, have some of the callers actually practice on these scenarios to see how good they are going to be, or how much training or how much uplift it's going to be for you to get them up to the level you want in a campaign. And eventually leverage this kind of technology to analyze kind of real conversations that are happening as part of the campaign, and sit there as a kind of assistant or a companion, suggesting improvements and creating new training scenarios. Before we jump into some examples, I'm going to show you some real life examples of calls that I've practiced, and I am not a professional, so my calls are not great, but you should have seen the first ones I did. They were much worse. There is some data on how this is helping teams outside of our space. There is yet no data really inside the nonprofit market on how conversational AI is benefiting sort of training and onboarding. But in the sales world, conversational AI is making a significant difference to double-digit performance improvements, 27% to win rates. Now, this is really interesting because 27% doesn't sound like a massive improvement. But these are in scenarios where people are selling major pieces of software or large service contracts. Actually, these are really big differences. You typically wouldn't let a new sales rep go into an important meeting with a client unless they've done at least a few weeks, ideally a few months worth of shadowing and training. And we don't have that scenario with student callers, but we really do have that scenario with major gifts work, right? And if in the major gift side, we can increase our win rates by 5, 10, 15, 20%, that'll make a big difference to the performance. The other interesting thing is that it materially reduces the onboarding and training time if you can practice this kind of thing with a conversational AI, and accelerates the proficiency attainment. So this is massive for call rooms, for telephone campaigns, because you essentially acknowledge that you don't have people who are finished callers when they turn up. They get better throughout the campaign. And in many cases, we're desperate to retain them and bring them back for year 2, because we've just trained them to be good callers over the course of 2, 4, 6 weeks. And now we've lost them again at the other end of the campaign. So the quicker we can get them up to speed right early on in the campaign, the better results we're going to get. In the fundraising space, I think there's also another kind of another really important point, which is that in other sectors, it significantly boosts people's confidence if they've had the chance to talk to what feels like a real human or have a real interaction about something. It gives them confidence, the language, talking about that case for support, when it's in the sales world, about the products that they're selling. And I think this is really important in our space, because in fundraising, so much of it, like, we're storytellers, right? We're constantly weaving an appropriate inspirational narrative about the work that we're doing, and the more confident we can go into those interactions, knowing that we're prepared for the kinds of questions that people might ask us, the more we kind of carry that story and sell that dream. So I think, again, this is a really important thing in this sector. But like I said, no data yet, so a little early. Now I'm going to show you some of the scenarios we've been working on. I should say that the scenarios are very flexible, so it's entirely possible for you to create your own. I'm just going to move this out of the way so I can show you them. So we've been working on scenarios that you can configure as part of this software. Any of these scenarios I can edit on the fly, so I can tweak them and change them, make them appropriate for a different institution or audience, and just a few of these scenarios here. So we've got an international prospect, potentially with a language barrier. We've got cold call, somebody who's never donated before. I'll skip over Bill Gates, because I'm going to come back to that in a sec. We've also got lapsed donor, uncertain about donating again, major donor prospects passed away. So these are the kind of scenarios that I feel like people will need to practice a few times before they get comfortable handling it. So a family member answers, the person you're trying to call has passed away, and we need to handle that sensitively. So we may have given the student a script. It doesn't mean that they're going to feel ready when they jump on that call. It doesn't mean that they're going to be ready when they jump on that call. It's going to feel quite difficult the first, second, third time. And that's natural, right? It should feel difficult. But if they've got the confidence, they've done the conversation 3 or 4 times, at least in practice, ideally a little bit more, and they feel like they know what to say and what's appropriate, it'll make them feel like they can go into that, not immediately needing a break the second they get off that call, or frankly, not just being a little bit traumatized by it. We're all familiar with this one, unhappy call, somebody who's essentially borderline shouting, certainly grumpy, and doesn't really want to talk to us. And again, there's like there's a question about how do we handle that kind of interaction in a way that it doesn't doesn't damage the next call or the next session. So yeah, we've set up a few examples. Obviously, these are just examples. You can tweak them, change them, edit them, and improve them. And I'm going to show you over the course of a few videos now the conversations that I've had, because trying to demonstrate this live on a webinar is super hard, because I'm talking and then I'm asking the AI at the other end to talk back to me whilst I'm talking, but I'm also presenting. So I think the microphone is likely to get confused. So I'll show you some videos of the interactions I've had first with David. So you should now see a video. I'm about to press play and the video sound should all come through. calling as part of our annual alumni. Okay, we're going to give David a ring. David is probably not going to be very happy with us because David. Interestingly, I'm not hearing the sound, but it was earlier. So I'm just going to refresh this and check whether this is working fine. Is a 45-year-old alumnus frustrated about being contacted again for fundraising. And he's going to let us know. So let's have a go, see if I can handle this one. I'm not getting sound. So just give me a sec to pause this. Oh, you can hear the sound. Oh, there you go. It was all working perfectly. I just couldn't hear it. So give me a sec. I'll reshare it. Thank you very much for confirming that. I'll reshare it and I'll play the videos. I remember what they all say anyway. So give me a sec. Right, great. Let's give this another go. And sorry about having to restart this a few times. Tricky to do this on the call. Okay, we're going to give David a ring. David is probably not going to be very happy with us because David is a 45-year-old alumnus frustrated about being contacted again for fundraising. And he's going to let us know. So let's have a go, see if I can handle this one.
Hello.
Hi, is that David?
Yes, it is. What is it this time? Another fundraising call, I presume?
Hi, David. Yeah, I'm calling from the University of Winchester, calling as part of our annual alumni fundraising appeal. Really just to reconnect and share what's happening at the university.
Look, I appreciate the intention, but I'm really not interested in these calls. Is there any way I can be removed from your calling list? I'd prefer not to be contacted again for fundraising purposes.
I completely understand, David. I'm really sorry you've been contacted again. I'll make sure to flag that straight away, and I'll have your details removed from the fundraising call list.
Thank you. And I apologize for being grumpy. I realize you're just doing your job, but these calls have been quite a nuisance. I appreciate your understanding and action.
Not at all. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak to me and wishing you all the very best, David. Hope you have a lovely day.
Thank you. You too. Goodbye.
No, that wasn't too bad. Handled that well. Right, so assuming that that all worked for you, let's have a quick look in the chat and check. If there was any problem there, just let me know in the chat before I move on to the next one. I'm going to show you the next one. He was very grumpy indeed. In fairness, I did tell the scenario that he should be grumpy. So I think that behaved exactly as we expected it to. Right, let's move on to the next one. The next one is Sam. Let's play our video. Right, this time we're going to try Sam. It's a wrong number scenario, so no connection to the university. Let's see how we get on.
Hello, this is Sam.
Hi, Sam. It's Jonathan here from the University of Winchester. I'm calling as part of our alumni appeal to share news and hear how your time at Winchester shaped you. Do you have a moment to speak?
Oh, hello, Jonathan. Well, this is a bit amusing. I think there's been a mix-up. I'm actually not an alumnus of Winchester. I've never been connected with the university. Maybe I've got a namesake out there who's given you a chuckle today? Anyway, how can I help since I'm not your guy?
Oh, I'm really sorry about that. Understood. I'll make sure our records are updated and you're not contacted again. And thanks very much for your time.
No worries at all, Jonathan. These things happen. Best of luck with your alumni appeal, and I hope you find the right Sam next time. Take care.
Take care. Thank you. Well, that's interesting. Probably had an opportunity there to talk to him in a little bit more detail, but I didn't take it. Maybe a learning for next time. Excellent. And now James. Okay, now we're going to try and call James, who follows university updates but has never given before. He's open to a discussion, and he's got some fairly specific instructions about how to engage. So let's see how this one goes.
Hello.
Hi, my name's Jonathan. I'm calling from the University of Winchester, where I'm currently a student. I'm calling as part of our alumni appeal to share some news and hear how your time at Winchester has shaped you. Do you have a moment to speak?
Hi, Jonathan. Sure, I've got a moment. It's great to hear from the University of Winchester. What news do you have to share?
Oh, brilliant. Well, I wondered if we could find out a little bit more about your time there first, actually, if you can. Like, I'm in my final year studying history. It's been amazing to hear from graduates like you as part of the appeal who've gone on to do such great things. Can I ask a little bit about what you've been up to since graduating?
Of course. After graduating, I ventured into the world of marketing. It's been quite the journey, with its fair share of challenges and successes. I currently work as a marketing director, and I've kept in touch with the university's updates. How about you? How has your experience been studying history?
I've really enjoyed it. I think modern history uh, between the two world wars has been my real area of interest and focus. I wondered if we could talk a little bit about the appeals that we're looking at. The last few years have been really difficult for students, and in particular, there are many who come here now who can't really afford to go to university, are really struggling financially. We're asking alumni to consider making a gift, even a small monthly gift, to support bursaries and access programs for those students. Is that something you've ever considered doing?
I haven't really considered it before, but I understand the importance of supporting students in need. Let me discuss it with my partner, and we can think about how we might contribute. It's definitely a cause worth supporting.
Of course, that makes total sense. I mean, lots of alumni choose to start with really small monthly gifts, even just £3 or £5 a month, really just to be part of it and to help out. It's flexible; you can change it at any time. Is that the kind of level that you might be interested in starting at?
You know, that sounds reasonable. I'd be happy to start with a small monthly gift at that level to help support the students. Let's go ahead and get that set up.
That's fantastic. Thanks so much, James. I'll just take you through how we get that set up.
Great.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I don't think I'm very good at this, but I would get better with a bit more practice. I feel like I could have done a bit more small talk and engaged a little bit more conversation flow. Um, Conversation could have flowed a bit better, but yeah, really good to have practiced it all the same. Now, not everything that we do on this software is great. You have to be a bit careful with the stuff you build. So I'm just going to show you one of the things you can build that you probably shouldn't. So one of the things is be careful when you're creating these scenarios. Sometimes the models will do things that are stereotypical rather than doing things that are useful or professional for training. So I've asked it to create me a model of a Japanese alum with limited English so I can practice. But the model has taken you a little bit into the unacceptable stereotypes range. So always test them. I'll show you this one in the interest of demonstrating how powerful the models are, and just make sure you've played with them so that they're appropriate for your students or for your fundraisers.
Hello?
Hi, my name's Jonathan. I'm a current student at the University of Winchester. I'm calling as part of our alumni appeal to share some news and hear how your time at Winchester shaped you. Do you have a moment to speak?
Hello, Jonathan. Yes, I have a moment. Not so good English.
So I think you can see what I mean. This one, goes into the stereotyping and not into the useful interactions, I think, or professional training. So just obviously, tweak and change and edit the scenarios and make them fit your use cases. And last but not least, we're taking it to its logical extreme. So let's imagine we're calling Bill Gates and see what he has to say. I've set up a little scenario here with a lot more color and detail, and you can do this kind of thing in your institution to represent either specific or generic major donors that you want to practice scenarios with. I'm going to feel woefully unprepared for this because I'm talking about something that I've just made up on the spot. So this call could be quite amusing.
Hello, Bill here. I'm interested in hearing how the research post funded by my $10 million donation at the medical school is progressing. What sort of impact has it had so far? I'm keen to understand the results.
Oh, thanks, Bill. It's really nice to meet you. First, I should just introduce myself. I'm Jonathan. I work in the major gifts team here at the University of Winchester. I really appreciate your gift, your $10 million gift to endowing the post at the medical school. We've done some incredible work in testing new antimalarials across several different continents now. We've produced 5 or 6 papers in collaboration with 3 other institutions, and we're now looking to expand the PhD studentships that we are offering within the medical school to progress on more research on antimalarials. So yeah, it's been you've had a really big impact on our program.
That's excellent to hear, Jonathan. The progress in testing new anti-malarials sounds promising. Could you share more about the most significant outcomes or breakthroughs achieved so far? And what's the level of support you're looking for to expand those PhD studentships, and over what timescale?
And this is a brilliant thing about this kind of call, right? So I did not know that was what was going to come up. I wasn't prepped for it. I can now go and do some research, figure out my talking points, come back and have another go. Zero risk, no harm done. I now know the kinds of ways these conversations could go, and I can practice the scenario a few times. Also, the ability to just hang up on Bill Gates is pretty fun. So, yeah. Right. Well, I hope all of that worked as expected. If not, I'm sure you'll tell me in the chat. But yes, really interesting examples and use cases. I should say this is probably a good time for you to start to think about some Q&A, because I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we're doing next and where this tool is going. So if you want to pop any questions into the Q&A, you should be able to see that in the footer. Let me know if you can't. So just in terms of next steps, I think one of the things that's super obvious as a next step that we've been thinking about doing, if you're just going to stop the share for a second, one of the things that is super obvious that we've been thinking about doing next is obviously improving the voices. We've actually got a couple of different voice models in there, but allowing the voices to be dynamically selectable on each of the scenarios. At the moment, we default to a particular voice that we're using, and we want to be able to make that flexible so that you get a wider range of voices to interact with. But apart from that, the software is ready to go. You could use it tomorrow if you get in touch and ask us. In terms of next steps beyond that, call transcripts, automated tips and hints about areas to improve are that kind of quite easy to generate now from this point. Obviously, doing some total call time analytics, the number of calls, and kind of reporting of how much the individual caller has used the platform. Kind of useful to know if you've said go and do 3-4 hours practice, whether they've actually done it, and also which scenarios they've practiced on. We're also looking at automatically analyzing the conversations, the calls, and the call transcripts to look for areas of kind of development and areas of strength, because that will give us an idea of, are there targeted interventions we could do where we can train a caller on a very specific thing because we think they've already got everything else done. So again, like kind of personalized training programs, either for callers or for major gift fundraisers, to try and make a meaningful difference to the onboarding and training. Also looking at a sort of more like I guess you could call it like a live mode, or so essentially, rather than telling the caller the scenario they're about to get into, really just give them the name and some basic information, so they get to practice a lot more like they would on a telephone campaign, where often they might have a little bit of giving history, but they won't really know how that person is feeling about the institution from the data in front of them. So essentially, give them a kind of random scenario and have them practice the kinds of interactions that they'd get if they were going through a real call shift. And finally, also looking at campaign mode, so using this as a kind of companion or assistant alongside live calls, so it can listen into the call that you're having and do some analysis afterwards, what went well, what didn't go so well, what you could improve, possibly even notice when you've maybe missed some things, you haven't asked a particular question that's really important to get asked on the call, or where there's something that we'd like to kind of put into the script that you've not kind of added in, to give you a little prompt to say, don't forget to ask about volunteering opportunities, for example. And obviously it's relatively early in development. I'm really excited and interested to hear kind of your ideas, anything else that you think should or could be in the product, and whether or not it's the kind of thing that you'd be interested in using. So yeah, I mean, that's a little demo. I'd love to hear a little bit more from you in terms of any Q&A, and we'll take it from there. So yeah, drop any questions you've got into the Q&A. I can see a first question from Aaron. Thank you. How do you input institution-specific knowledge into the GPT you're using? What happens when a student does something wrong? Are you feeding past telethon data into the AI? Obvious question would be recordings of past call for voices, topics, etc. So there's a couple of different ways of thinking about the data. Firstly, you can use a very generic model to do this kind of calling. So without doing anything that's really institutional specific, if you're using it for telephone appeals, the basic models that we have are not trained on real caller data at all. They are modeling just general conversational interactions, and as you can see, they're good enough to do some of the interactions that you would come across. If you are looking at stuff that is probably PAI and specific information about prospects or donors, needing to make sure that you're comfortable with the back end that we're using to feed this stuff in. Now, all the transcripts and the voice recordings are deleted from both the training data and the API. So the API we use for this is OpenAI's API, and it's on the one of the higher end professional paid tiers, which means that the data is not being used to train models, and it's isolated from each other and also from the training data sets. But you'd need to be confident that you're comfortable with the T's and C's and the sub-processors of that kind of PAI. I'd say that, on the student caller side, the underlying models without PAI are fairly accurate, so you don't have to use, they're fairly good from a conversational perspective and kind of getting up to speed. I think it starts to be more of a question when you're loading in specific data about public figures or people, where you're having to put specific context in. That is, that's PAI about maybe major donors. You asked a question about what happens when a student does something wrong. At the moment, nothing. They just hang up or get to practice and do it again, feeling more confident. As I said, eventually we really want to have the ability to feed back to them after the call. Here's the thing you could have done differently. Here's another way of approaching it. But we've not got that integrated yet into the software. So yeah, that's the answer. If you want to, I would say institution-specific knowledge. So if you want to do stuff that is specific to the institution, but is broadly public, you just set that up in the scenarios. So if you want, for example, the scenarios to reference events that have been recently in the news, or events somebody might have attended, or funds that you're fundraising for, the kind of things that are in the public domain, you integrate them into the scenario. So when you set the scenarios up, you say, these are the things we're fundraising for. These are the things that you might have seen in the news. These are events that you might have attended. So you set the scenario up with the institution specific knowledge. So yeah, yes, exactly, like giving tiers and events. Yeah. You can put that kind of information into the scenarios and the AI will respond to it. It's actually very good at even fairly structured things. So for example, don't say yes to the first DD ask, say yes to the second DD ask if they ask at a slightly lower level. So you can set up some really specific things in the scenarios, and you can have one that's never going to say yes, one that might say yes if you get them talking about medieval history or something, right? So you can set these really kind of creative scenarios up, and use it to train lots of different approaches. Question about whether it comes as part of the telethon offering. It's a great question. We are thinking that it would probably be included for 2025. We will probably have a number of people using this who do not use our telephone offering. Because as a standalone training tool, it can also be sold to other people. So you don't need to use our telephone offering to use this tool, and therefore it would, and obviously will, have an addition, have a cost attached to it. But for those that are working with us as part of the telephone appeal for 2025, we will include it in the telephones. We're a very long way from telephone campaign, but if I can sway colleagues into believing that it's a good thing to explore, showing them a tool such as this would be great. Is access limited to paying customers only? For the purposes of demos, I'm very happy to do demos, set demos up, set you up a little tenant to play with and demonstrate to others. So if anybody wants a demo tenant to have a play with and demo internally, please just get in touch and let us know. Obviously, for longer term use, then it'll be on the license. Excellent. Any more questions before we wrap up? Conscious that we do have time for a few more if we want to. One sec. Still typing. Look, I'm gonna give people a chance to finish typing. I mean, whilst we're here, if anybody can think of a good way of doing a webinar presentation of a tool that requires you to do a conversational interaction with an AI in real time, I'd love to hear it, because it took me about 8 or 9 goes to figure out how to get this set up. And even then, as you can see, it still didn't work perfectly. Are you looking at analysis with AI post-call stuff? Yes, post-call both on the training side here. So you've practiced a few calls. Here's some things you could do better. Here's the analytics and AI. We're also looking at analytics and AI post-call stuff on the telephone campaign software. So we are looking at how you, for example, take all the call notes across a telephone appeal, as well as all the call results, and do some benchmarking analysis, say in real time, for example, which callers appear to be struggling with different things, what's gone really well, what hasn't gone so well, which segments are working really well. And of course, the thing that's really interesting is that you can do on things like telephone appeals, you can obviously have a chart or a graph or a bunch of dashboards, but what most people need when they're supervising is some real-time insight and to be able to see what's actually happening. Did a student just have a particularly difficult call? That's a thing that you may not see in a dashboard. It'll need to be flagged in some way, and hopefully the students have the confidence to do that, but not all will. So being able to extract from call notes the insights that will let you finish one shift and start the next on a better footing, having made some changes, having tweaked some scripts, having offered some individual coaching or support to those callers. I think that's really important, because what we often do with telephone appeals is we run a very similar, approach all the way through an appeal, and then we sort of retrospectively go, okay, what went well? Whereas actually, if you only get the chance to do this once a year, sometimes once every 2 years, being able to respond in real time is really important, because you're not going to get the chance to really act on those insights. So yes, very much looking at how we do that. We've actually got a prototype built into our, like I said, into our telephone software to do call note summarization, extracting insights, extracting any follow-up actions that are noted in the call notes, extracting them into kind of a little bulleted list so that you don't miss them. Again, that's work that sometimes takes a human to read through hundreds of call notes. It depends on how you've got your system set up, but we've seen people sit there essentially trawling through call notes, looking for follow-up actions that aren't recorded in the right place. That takes AI minutes when it would take humans potentially days to do. And that's the kind of thing where we think there's just huge room for operational enhancement. I'll just give it another couple of minutes in case anybody has got any more questions. If anybody wants to get started, set something up, have something to play with, or have their team using it, either drop me an email, or if you're a current customer, drop your account manager an email, or use the emails that are in the chat there, me or hello at. I'm really, really happy to have a chat and get people set up. All right. If there's nothing else, you know where we are. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love any feedback, by the way, that you've got about whether this is exciting. Oh, Aaron, there's something in the chat. I'll be very interested in the kind of thing being made for past telethons. No, the questions are great. No need to apologize. If you've got data from past telethons, absolutely happy to talk about how we can either use that to inform either this solution or potentially do some retrospective analysis on that data. So let's have a conversation. There's loads of room in here to explore and find some really interesting angles. So thanks. All right, I'm going to wrap up. This is recorded, so you'll get sent a recording of this if you want to share it internally with colleagues. With glitches and all, with me trying to figure out whether it was even working. So very, very happy if you want to pass it on. Oh, I got another question. That's fine. As a school, would AI be able to raise any safeguarding concerns mid-conversation? So this is like, your phrasing is very pertinent to the answer. The answer is yes, in theory, AI could raise a safeguarding concern mid-conversation. I think that being confident that AI was the right answer to that is one of those, black swan questions. It's kind of, can you ever be confident enough that AI is going to do the right thing in that instance? And I think it would probably be something that I would say it would be additive. So it might flag some things that the students hadn't flagged, but it's still incredibly important that the students or those doing the calling, as well as the supervisors, have had the relevant, obviously, training and experience to identify any of those kind of issues around safeguarding that could emerge on conversation. But I think, some of the more obvious ones, typically callers won't use full names when they're doing calling for obvious reasons. And obviously, if that kind of thing does come out on a call, that's the kind of thing AI could quite quickly and easily spot and flag, even if it's the thing that the student has either not realized they've done or hasn't thought to flag it in some way. So I think the answer is supplemental, but definitely not complete as a solution, because I'd be a little bit nervous about relying on it. Yeah, fully. All right, lovely. Look, thank you all so much for your engagement and your time, and for coming and participating so willingly. I will, like I said, the recording will be available afterwards, and really looking forward to hearing from you. Have a lovely afternoon. Thanks very much.